You're listening to Faith Connections Podcast, where we are dedicated to connecting you to your faith. And now your hosts, Chris and Mari Torres.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Faith Connections. Chris and Mari Torres.
Hey guys.
Hey guys. Hey guys.
Red
Deeper voice, red eyes. Yeah, no, deeper but not boring. Hopefully. Thank you for tuning in. We're excited. We are starting our part one of a study called The Hiding Place. The Hiding Place. Not hide and seek, but the hiding place. And man, we're excited to kind of dive in. But I wanted to share a story with you guys before we kind of get started. Chris and I, when we first started in ministry, we started in different places, right? Typically, you just kind of start volunteering, and I started in the nursery. I know you were part of security and things like that. But when we first took over the youth, I love working with youth, right? Because you get to have fun and you get to do fun stuff. But I remember we started planning different fun things to do. And one of the first things that we did when we started supporting and helping the youth is they wanted to go paintballing. You have law enforcement background, so I know that you've gone paintballing before, and you go to the shooting range, and that's what you do. That was part of, hey, I know how to do this. I got this. I had never been paintballing before. And so when we went paintballing, you didn't have the opportunity to come with us. It was just me and the youth. And so it was my first time. I was a little nervous, a little scared. I don't think that I really portrayed that, or that they saw that I was nervous. But either way, we went, to this place, and they put us up in teams. And so my strategy immediately was like, okay, how do I make it alive? How do I make it without getting hit? Because I do know, I've never been paintballing, but I do know when those bullets, right? The bullets come to us, are coming towards us. I know that it's going to hurt, right? Man, like that I do know. That I know, and I've heard. And the reason I know is because I've seen people and they're like, oh, they have bruises. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went paintballing. Like, oh, like, if it bruised, it hurts. So I was like, okay, how do I make it alive? How do I survive? And how do I make sure I don't get hit, right? So that was the strategy. And so my strategy was to, once they released, right, you got all the equipment, you go through, they give you all the instructions. They have these fortresses, these towers and different, sections. But my strategy was, I'm going to go to the tallest, biggest tower, the fortress, where it's going to cover me fully, protect me. And I'm going to just wait there, and I won't get hit, and just keep an eye out, maybe sometimes peek. And if I can shoot at someone, I will. Right. So I'm going to hide out in my hiding place where I'm going to be as best protected. How do you think that worked out for me?
Yeah, and that's the question I was going to ask you. How did it work out for you? But I would assume that it worked out for you pretty well, because you have advantage, the fact that you're fortified all the way around, so you get to see the enemy, or in this case, the youth coming at you,
or whoever was there. Or
whoever, yeah. Right? You
teamed us up with different people.
You're probably in higher ground, so you're in an elevated position.
Yes,
and that's the best position if you're the one laying suppressive fire. Thinking of military tactics here. You want to be on the high ground. The person that is below you, that's the worst position on low ground. That's always an uphill battle. And it's very dangerous, because you're basically picking off fish from a barrel. And in your higher elevation, that's usually the snipers love those positions, because when you're elevated, oh man, you have control of the battlefield. Yeah. You see everything, and anybody that exposes themselves can consider themselves dead.
Yeah. And so there's typically two kinds of people. There's the people, when you think about people that go paintballing, you have your eager beaver. That's all you see them is
running and gunning.
Yeah, running and gunning. Thank you. Yes, they're running and gunning,
spraying and praying.
But yeah, spraying and praying. But they're risking getting hit and getting out, and that's it. You got to wait until the game's over, right? And then you have
Can't do that in real
smart
life
people.
because
You have the smart people, okay? You have the smart people who will hide out, allow and wait for everyone to get out, and then you only have to fight one or two people, right?
I don't know if that's really a good strategy.
I know. So either way, it's going to connect to what we're going to talk
I
about
know.
today. But
You're waiting it out.
I waited out. Yeah. So that was my game plan. Okay.
Yeah.
So whether you think it's smart or not, man, let me tell you, I did not get hit.
But I would assume it worked out for you.
It absolutely worked out for me. It was a
Yes.
strategy, and let me tell you, it was effective. In that moment, and I didn't get hit. I didn't get hit once. I didn't come with any bruises. I mean, it was good.
So this is where I think you just mentioned youth and you being the adult there. So this is where years of wisdom
Thank you.
pays off. Whereas they were hyped up on sugar and probably all energetic. And
Yeah.
if they're teenagers, they're full of testosterone, at that age. So they're running and gunning and spraying and praying. And you're like, let them kill themselves and let them take each other out.
Yeah.
And I'll be the last one standing once the smoke is cleared.
There you go. And so I share that. I know it's funny, right? And we're laughing about it, but I share that because I want to connect that story to real life situations. And we're always talking about how we, I know our last episode, we talked about, attending University of Adversity. And so we're faced with many challenges, things that sometimes turn our lives upside down. We are completely overwhelmed. Thinking about the holidays. Let's think about the holidays. I mean, I'm so behind on everything because I'm overwhelmed, whether some of it is caused by my own doing or my lack of doing, but emotions are heightened, people are stressed and there's
Yes.
just so much going on and people are trying to be prepared for this and get this done and get that done. And, you're just ready to get that time off.
This is the
but-
second busiest season, time of year for us in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Family violence goes up. We see a lot of,
It is. It's just like the
lot.
emotions are flaring. Like, it's just, it never fails. During this season, I see it. I see it day in and day
Stress
in and
levels.
out. Yeah. And so we might be in those situations where we're just overwhelmed. And so we wanted to talk about
another
what-
fun fact. I guess it's not really a fun fact, but I have read that usually after Thanksgiving all the way to New Year's, on males, especially when talking about men's fitness or wellness, heart attacks go up.
there's
Heart
an
attacks
increase.
go up. They increase. This is the time of year where more men experience heart attacks compared to any time of the year. And I think, and it's all part to do with all the stress that the holidays incur in us. Maybe we're having financial struggles. So with the holidays around, you have to prepare meals and have food, and you're having guests, and you have to buy gifts. So all that stress of that already in itself, on top of the madness that's happening at the stores, everybody running around.
Inflation,
And-
everything's
and-
expensive. Like,
So
Lord,
you just
it's-
you just scratched the surface on that, but it got me thinking. But yes, that's heart attacks go up in this time of year for men.
Yeah.
So women
So-
too got to take care of themselves though.
Absolutely. So there's times in our lives where we're faced with situations, circumstances that we just can't explain, that just might not make sense to us, and it creates this overwhelming feeling. And when you think about overwhelmed, the definition to overwhelmed, well, it means to completely have something turned upside down. The root word is whelm. It means to overturn and to turn upside down. And the actual definition is to defeat someone or something by using a lot of force. A lot of force. So there's this strong force that's creating this feeling of, man, pressure of I've had it up to here. I'm done. Like, I just can't take it anymore. And it brings us to Psalm 61, and I want to share it. And then we're going to kind of go into a story that goes into it. But it says this. It says, Psalm 61, verses 1 through 4. It says, "O God, listen to my cry. Hear my prayer from the ends of the earth. I cry to you for help. when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the towering rock of safety, for you are my safe refuge. Let me live forever in your sanctuary, safe beneath the shelter of your wings. So I just shared that key word, overwhelmed. Here, this is David. This is King David. It's a Psalm of David, and he is in despair. And so he's crying out to God, and he's overwhelmed. He's facing a situation, a circumstance that is beneath his human understanding. It's beneath his resources. It's beneath what he feels he can accomplish. And I know last week we talked about strength and depending on the force within and not our strength, right?
Right.
So we talked about that. So even though it's, this is totally a different topic, everything ties in together, right? It's just how
sure
God
does,
works. He works in mysterious ways. And so the story that we want to talk about, it's a two-part, but the first story we want to kind of talk about is Elijah. And we talked about this story not too long ago in one of our messages, but it's Elijah because we're going to kind of take a look in a different perspective and kind of connect it to Psalm 61 and what that truly means. But before we kind of go into it, I just wanted to really focus on the Psalm and just kind of really connect it, right? So here David is saying, oh God, listen to my cry, hear my prayer. When you think about what David is saying is he's not just assuming or, presuming that, well, no, he's claiming and requesting God's attention. Hear my prayer. Like, hey, I'm at my wit's end and I need you. I need you. He's crying out for help. And I love this because it says, from the ends of the earth, I cry to you for help. From the ends of the earth. I mean, I am out of resources. I am out of strength. I am out of human understanding. I don't know how to handle my situation. Have you ever been at your wit's end?
A few weeks ago.
Yeah. Where you just, I cannot take it. Like, I don't know what to do. Are you facing one of those situations right now that you just don't understand why you're going through what you're going through, why it's happening, you're questioning, and you've just had enough. You are done, completely done, right? And of course, then he's expressing when my heart is overwhelmed. But I love this because he's requesting, lead me to the towering rock of safety, for you are my safe refuge, a fortress where my enemies cannot reach me. Let me live forever in your sanctuary, safe beneath the shelter of your wings. Lead me to the towering rock of safety. And it connects to what was my strategy when I was like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to be able to make it through this paintballing, being shot at. My strategy was what?
To go to a fortress in a high place.
Yes, right? That was my strategy. It's lead me to a towering rock of safety. And that's what it is. It's a towering rock of safety. It's somewhere where it's high in elevation. It's big and it's strong enough to protect me where I can go in to hide. Right?
So with the story, the one that it came to mind for me was Elijah when he flees from Jezebel. And this is 1 Kings chapter 19. And immediately we know that a message is relayed to Elijah that they're going to take his life, right? So
A threat.
it's a threat.
A threat to kill
is
him.
made. So a threat against his life.
Yes.
So that would be overwhelming to know that you're about to be killed. You're gonna be hunted down.
And he is overwhelmed because he says,
Correct, in verse 4, "O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers." So there he's pleading and begging that God just take his life because he don't want to deal with it. He's already overwhelmed with the mere threat that somebody's going to take his life. The Jezebel's going to take his life. So he cries out to God and says, "Oh, dear Lord, take my
and
life."
before that, he says, I have had enough, Lord. I am done. Like, I cannot take this. I have had enough.
And the interesting thing about this verse here, this I guess if it's a two-sided coin here, he's crying out for God to take his life. And if anybody knows, and everybody is in tune with scriptures and knows the history, Elijah is one of the two people in the entire Bible that did not experience death and did not suffer death. As a matter of fact, he was just
He ascended.
ascended to heaven. So imagine if God had answered his prayer at that moment, because that's his prayer. He's crying out to God. So it sounds to me like a prayer. When we cry out to God, it's our prayer. Had God answered that prayer, he would have been not one of two, but he would have just been like anybody else, experienced death, right? However, it goes to note and to highlight that sometimes we got to thank God for unanswered prayers.
Amen. Yes.
Because we pray for the wrong things. When we're overwhelmed, are we praying for that correct thing? Are we praying not so much that God take me out of this situation, but God teach me, God give me strength through this situation?
Yes.
And it kind of goes back to the Chariots of Fire story of God, please open my eyes so that I can see this in different light and learn from it, because God is molding us and preparing us for many other storms that are ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Man, you make some great points. So in the story, so we know that Jezebel it wants to kill him because Elijah's doing God's work and he killed all of Baal's prophets. And so she's upset and she wants to come after him. And so he's overwhelmed. What's interesting about this story is that anytime that we've studied the story, I've heard a sermon on the story, the focus has always been on the fact that Elijah is scared and he's running. He's fleeing, right? He's running away. And that's exactly what he does here, okay? And it's so interesting because it says here, right, that he's afraid. He is afraid. And he runs. It says Elijah, verse 3, it says Elijah was afraid and fled for his life, right? So then he goes and he goes into the wilderness. He goes under a broom tree. We talked about that on one of our messages. And he prayed. He's had enough and he's trying to die, right? So then the angels show up. They feed him. They comfort him. They lift him up. Hey, keep going. This is what I want to really talk about, right? Because the focus is on the why Elijah is always running. But people never really focus on where Elijah is running. Yes, where he's going. And so we talked about we are faced with situations that we're always asking, well, why am I going through this situation? Why am I experiencing this? Why is this happening? If you're a believer, it's even at a higher level because you're like, God, I serve you. I am your child. I am, doing your good work here. I'm trying to spread the good news, but you start questioning because there's situations that come, adversity, opposition that you're faced with that you just can't comprehend. It's beneath us and we don't understand and we might never understand. And so this is where Elijah is. He's at his wit's end. But the interesting thing that even though he's fleeing because he's afraid, I love this because the focus should now be on where he is going. And this is where we're still in 1 Kings chapter 19.
But he's fleeing to Mount Horeb.
Yes. And so it's going to be verse 8. And yes, just like you said, so he got up, ate, drank, he got some food, and it says he traveled 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai. Yes, it's the mountain of God. There he came to a cave where he spent the night. So where was Elijah going? Yes, he was afraid. Yes, he was overwhelmed. Yes, he was at his wit's end. But where was he going?
Mount Horeb is an alternate name for Mount Horeb is Mount Sinai. So which is God's mountain.
Mountain of God. The mountain of God. So even though he was fleeing, even though he was at his wit's end, he was going to a higher power. He was seeking
to a fortress.
To a fortress.
A mighty fortress of
a mighty fortress.
Because it's a mountain.
And he went into the cave for protection. If you go to chapter 18, 1 Kings chapter 18, it's still a story of Elijah, but it talks about another prophet, Obadiah, who, you know, of course, Jezebel's trying to kill all of Israel's prophets. And of course, God's using Elijah to attack, right, and kill, you know, idols and things like that. But Obadiah takes all of the prophets and takes them up to
A mountain.
in a cave, and that's where he hides them. And so that's why we're talking about the hiding place, because sometimes when we're faced with situations that we can't comprehend, that are not within our own reasoning and human understanding, we have to go to our fortress.
And
We
that's why
have
scripture
to
says, do not lean
on your
on your
own
own
understanding.
understanding.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's something that is beneath us. Like we can't even handle something and we don't understand, but he does. He understands. He knows. He's our protector. He's our defender. He is our fortress. He is our strong tower. And, you know, I love this because, you know, he gets to the mountain and this is where God speaks to him. And he's like, what are you doing here, Elijah? Right. And we talked about that in one of our previous messages where God's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Right. You know,
Surprised but not surprised. 'cause
surprised but
we
not
get-
surprised.
Yeah.
Yes. But you know, this really kind of hit home for me because I think sometimes we expect as believers to be strong and to be able to handle and cope with different situations. And yes, we got this. And we expect and we preach on, don't run away from your problems, face them, and don't do this and do that, you know, and that's all great. But we also have to talk about real talk, reality situations, how we handle them as humans, and the reactions that we have and the feelings that we have.
Right.
And we all face them. And so there are many times where, guess what? You're not going to be able to fight the battle. We want to fight the battle. My mentality there in going to paintball would have been like those eager beavers, young kids. Oh, I got this. And
Put me in, coach.
no, because there's some battles that flesh and blood can't win. And this was a battle that, because of how he felt, he was like, oh man, you know, I can't do this anymore. And so there are things that we can't face, we can't try to overcome. And so that's why we need to be able to go to a higher power, go to our strong tower.
Quick little thing to point out though, how interesting. Once he is up there in the mountain and God speaks to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? You know, the interesting thing is that, you know, there was an earthquake, there was a fire, there were strong winds and everything. And I think that's symbolic to what our life can be, how overwhelmed we can be. There's chaos around us. Things can be out of control. In Mother Nature, we have no control of Mother Nature. We have no control of these strong winds, of the earthquakes, of the fires. We have no control of those things. Sometimes it's beyond our control.
Correct.
But yet God was not in none of that chaos. It says that he comes to him in a gentle whisper.
Yes.
So that to me, that's the peace of God. You know, he's coming as peaceful as possible. And no matter how chaotic or how crazy or how overwhelmed you are, that when you go seek refuge in that fortress, when you go to that higher place, you find the peace of God. Because it comes in a gentle, the word gentle whisper is used, right? Yeah. And I think it's illustrated as gentle because that is our Father. He's gentle. He's loving. He's merciful.
Yes.
And you run to the Father and you're running to that mighty rock, that fortress, the higher place to seek refuge.
And safety.
But he's gentle in caring for his child, for his love,
Yes.
for his chosen ones.
And I love that because look, you're talking about verse 4 on Psalm 61. It says, let me live forever in your sanctuary, safe beneath the shelter of your wings. And that's what God is for us, right? And that's what he does for us. You know, and when you I love verse 3 too, because it says, "For you are my safe refuge, a fortress where my enemies cannot reach me." And that is so true, because even in the story of paintballing, and I know we're talking about, okay, it's a fun thing, but it's an illustration, because not one,
It's a makeshift
not
battle.
It is, but not one bullet touched me. Not one. Not one at all. And I was the only one who didn't get hit.
It's because I wasn't in the game.
Maybe. But, I share that to share this. And it's because it's just so important, right? But it's because we have a safety, we have a refuge, and we have someone that we can go to. But you have to exercise that decision and choose to
Not to run from, but run to.
run. But even though you're running from, like Elijah, he's running away. It seems like he's running away, but
But he's running too.
He is running too. That's the awesome thing
running
about
too.
it, that the focus had always been on, well, he's running in fear and you shouldn't run, or whatever the case may be. But no, where was he going? Where was Elijah going? And he was
To the
going
mountain of God.
To the mountain of God.
To that
He was
higher
going
place.
To his refuge.
To the refuge,
Yes,
yeah.
to his protector. And so, I hope that
This is only part one, ladies
this
and
is only
gentlemen.
part one. We're excited about part two. We're gonna continue to dig deep into Psalm 61, and we're gonna focus on the person who wrote Psalm, which is
Because
King
he has a
David.
very similar story to
Yes.
Elijah
Yes,
of where he runs
does.
to.
And it's just a message from God that he's just yearning to get our attention, to want us to be able to seek him. But
And
when
run
you're
to him.
and run to him. And so when you're faced with adversity or opposition and you are just overwhelmed, you cannot take it anymore. Please remember this. You have a strong tower. You have a safety, a refuge. You have a defender that you can go to. You can run to at any moment that will protect you from your enemies. So we hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please make
Yes.
sure that you like, you subscribe, you comment. Thank you.
I hope y'all had good holidays too. Happy holidays.
Yes, we hope you had a Merry Christmas,
And-
that you were able to spend some good quality time with your
Yes.
family, and that we continue to remember the reason for the season, and that
right.
is Jesus.
Jesus.
So thank you so much for tuning in to Faith Connections, where we connect you to your
Faith.